Welcome back to Beyond the Buzz, where we explore the thin line between light and shadow, faith and despair. I'm BJ Southwell, and tonight we stand on the edge of a moment that would change everything, a tale of resistance, betrayal, and the power to remake creation itself. This is episode 6, The Final Gambit. But before we join the resistance in their desperate mission, let us step into the heart of the darkness itself. Far below the surface of the earth, in a chamber untouched by time, Lucifer stood alone. His throne, carved from obsidian, glowed faintly with the embers of hell's fire. Around him the air shimmered, alive with whispers of his legions. Lucifer's voice cut through the silence, smooth and resonant. Et vidi stellam de caelo cadentem. And I saw a star fall from heaven. He smiled bitterly. The first fall was mine, but the last, that will belong to them. He stepped toward the first word, hovering in the center of the chamber, a sphere of divine energy, its surface rippling with light and shadow. His gaze was steady as he spoke to the unseen forces that swirled around him. Do you hear them? Their prayers. Fiat voluntas tua, thy will be done. How quaint. He extended a hand toward the sphere, his fingers brushing its surface. They call it hope, but hope is nothing more than desperation wrapped in a prettier lie. Lucifer turned away, his smile cold. Let them come. We will show them the truth. Et cognoscetis veritatem, et veritas vos liberabit. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. In the underground base of the resistance, the air was thick with tension. A single flickering bulb illuminated the faces of the rebels as they gathered around a battered table. Maps and notes lay scattered across its surface, alongside weapons and holy relics. At the head of the table stood Dorian, his voice steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. This is it, he said. Lucifer's fortress is vulnerable. If we strike now, we can end this. Mara, ever the skeptic, leaned forward. Vulnerable, she said, her voice sharp. He has the first word. That's not vulnerability. That's certain death. Dorian's gaze didn't waver. We have no choice, Mara. If we wait, we lose the world. Fiat voluntas tua. In the corner, Angelo sat in silence, his head bowed. The cloth around his hand glowed faintly, betraying the mark that bound him to Lucifer. When Dorian turned to him, his voice softened. Angelo, we need you. In nomine Dei, lead us. Angelo's response came slowly, his voice strained. You don't know what you're asking of me. But the decision was made. The resistance prepared to move, their prayers quiet and desperate. As they left the base, Angelo whispered to himself, Fiat lux, let there be light. Lucifer's fortress rose like a wound in the earth, its spires piercing a sky churned with fire and ash. Rivers of molten lava carved paths of destruction around its base, and the walls whispered as if alive, their voices mocking those who dared enter. The resistance moved cautiously, navigating the labyrinthine corridors. Each step brought new horrors, traps that sprang from the walls, shadowed demons that struck without warning, and whispers that crawled into their minds. And then, the inevitable. A trap was sprung. Dorian, without hesitation, turned to hold off the oncoming horde. Go, he shouted. Get to the sanctum. His final words, make this worth it, echoed in Angelo's mind as he led the survivors forward. The sanctum was a cathedral of chaos, its walls inscribed with celestial glyphs, and its air pulsing with the energy of the first word. At its center hovered the sphere, glowing with a light that seemed to pierce the soul, and standing before it was Lucifer, radiant and terrible. So, Lucifer said, his voice smooth, you've come, and for what? To destroy me? Ad nihilum deducetur. all will come to nothing. Mara stepped forward, her weapon raised. We've come to end this. Lucifer laughed, the sound reverberating through the chamber. End this? My dear, you cannot end what has always been. He turned his gaze to Angelo. But you understand, don't you? Angelo stepped forward, his marked hand trembling. You turned hope into despair. Lucifer's smile widened. No, Angelo, I gave you the truth. I showed you what your God refuses to, the burden of choice. Cur me de reliquisti. Why hast thou forsaken me? As Lucifer spoke, the room seemed to shrink around Angelo. The resistance shouted for him to resist, but their voices faded into the background. Slowly, Angelo dropped to one knee. The mark on his hand flared, its light blinding as it burned into his flesh. Mara's voice broke. No. Lucifer reached out, placing a hand on Angelo's shoulder. Ecce homo. Behold the man who has chosen wisely. The first word responded to his command, its energy surging as it began to open. The first word erupted, its power tearing through the room. Time fractured, revealing glimpses of creation itself. Angels sang in discordant harmony. Stars were born and destroyed in a single breath. But then cracks began to form along its surface. Lucifer faltered. His triumphant expression gave way to confusion. This cannot be. Angelo, now fully bound to the darkness, stood silently, watching as chaos unfolded. The resistance was shattered, their hopes consumed by the very power they sought to stop. And yet, in the light of the first word's fractures, there was a whisper of something else, an unintended consequence that even Lucifer could not foresee. As the chamber crumbled, Angelo whispered, Miserere me, Deus. Have mercy on me, O God. And so the gambit was played and the cost revealed. Angelo's choice, born of despair, fractured the foundation of creation itself. Was this Lucifer's victory or the beginning of his undoing? Only time will tell. This has been Beyond the Buzz. Until next time, stay vigilant and remember, even the brightest light casts the darkest shadow.